We'll call the meeting to order for Wicomico County Council Legislative Session 2025-01 for January 7th, 2025. Those that would like to stand and join us in the Lord's Prayer and Pledge of Allegiance, please do. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. And give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Entertain a motion from council to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Second? Any questions, corrections? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Consent agenda is approved. This time we have a proclamation to recognize the month of January as National Human Trafficking Month. We have Ms. Danielle Thompson from the Life Crisis Center here, I believe, and the proclamation will be presented by Council or Vice President Jeff Merritt.
You can go
Come
to
right out.
Okay.
You're the next contestant. On the Price is Right. Good evening, everybody. The Life Crisis Center is a gem in our community. We cannot thank you enough for all the work you do. Most of it done without the public's knowledge as designed. So thank you for keeping people safe and doing the work you do. This is a proclamation for Human Trafficking Prevention Month. Whereas human trafficking is a serious problem on the Eastern Shore, where traffickers use violence, threats, and other manipulative tactics to force and coerce young and adult individuals to engage in commercial sex acts or to provide labor or services against their will. And whereas there have been reports of child sex trafficking in every Eastern Shore county since 2013, and 127 human trafficking victims have been rescued throughout Maryland, and whereas the Eastern Shore Human Trafficking Task Force is engaged in actions by encouraging and promoting awareness and prevention of human trafficking, and whereas January is Human Trafficking Prevention Month, which recognizes that human trafficking consistently occurs throughout the United States and emphasizes the need to focus on prevention, prosecution, partnerships, and support for the survivors. Now therefore be it resolved that the Wicomico County Council hereby proclaims January as Human Trafficking Prevention Month in Wicomico County, done this 9th day of January 2025, and signed by all members of the Wicomico County Council. Thank you.
So much.
Please feel free to say a few words.
This is very exciting. I am not Dr. Danielle Thomas. I am Mo Brown, and I'm here as tribute because she's in Dagsboro, as snowed in. At Life Crisis, it is just paramount for us to have community partners and relationships. Without those, we would not be able to do much of anything. And just thank you so much. Just appreciate it all around. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if they're going to want to take a picture, so let's step in front of the podium.
All right. Okay. I'm really silly, so leg, roll, a little shoulder. Thank you.
We also have a proclamation next to recognize the month of January as National Mentoring Month. We have Miss Catherine Douglas from Big Brothers and Big Sisters of the Eastern Shore. Councilman James Nguyen will be presenting the proclamation.
Hi.
So we have a proclamation for National Mentoring Month. Whereas during the National Mentoring Month, we celebrate the dedicated men and women who volunteer their time, talents, and resources to mentor, teach, and empower young people and those in need of guidance. And whereas mentors come from the diverse backgrounds and improve the lives of America's youth, helping them to grow into responsible adults. And whereas in Wicomico County and across our country, mentors serve not only as role models for young people, but also as an inspiration to dream big and pursue any goals regardless of circumstances. And whereas these acts of generosity and compassion are a reminder that each of us has a deeper purpose and can make a positive difference in the lives of youth. Now, therefore, in recognition of the numerous contributions made by mentors in Wicomico County, be it resolved that the Wicomico County Council hereby proclaim January 2025 as National Mentoring Month.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Although at Big Brothers and Big Sisters, we serve the 9 counties. Wicomico is our home, where our office is. And currently, we have over 45 kids matched with adults that are helping with mentoring. And we have found the data showed that 99% of that improved self-esteem, help get out of trouble, and different things. So mentoring is a great thing. If you know anybody, please have them call us, or if you're interested. Thank you. Thank you.
To recognize we have ex-councilman Ms. Bill McCain here, former vice president of county council. Glad to have you here, Bill. And we have Jeannie Hadaway Riccio, who was a very good delegate for so many years, and also Maryland Secretary of the Department of Recreation and, hold on.
Natural resources.
Natural Resources, thank you. Sorry about that. Natural Resources, thank you. Mr. Benson, good evening.
We have emergency legislative bill 2024-13. It's an emergency act to amend Chapter 225 of the Wicomico County Code titled Zoning, Part 6, titled Accessory and Principal Uses, Article 28 titled Principal Uses, Section 225-67 titled Table of Permitted Uses, Designations, and Part 7 titled Density and Dimensional Regulations, Article 19 titled Density and Dimensional Regulations Enumerated, Section 225-70 titled Setback Requirements, and Part 8 titled Special Standards for Particular Uses, Article 20 titled Uses and Standards for Particular Uses to establish Section 225-103.1 titled Medical Clinic to regulate outpatient medical and dental care facilities with 3 or more physicians in Wicomico County. This is a bill to amend the county zoning with regard to medical facilities in Wicomico County. This is being presented as an emergency act pursuant to Section 311G of the county charter. This bill will need to be passed with a vote of at least 5 members of the council in order to meet the requirements for this to be emergency legislation. And in Section 2 of the proposed bill, there is a section that defines or states that this is an emergency. An emergency exists to wit a severe shortage of family medicine physicians. Wherefore, this legislative bill is passed as an emergency measure necessary for the immediate preservation of public health, safety, and welfare. So this is here for a public hearing tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Benson. This time we open the floor for public hearing on legislative bill 2024-13. If you have any comments you'd like to make in reference to this specific bill, come to the podium, please. State your name, your county of residence, and your concerns. That concludes the public hearing for legislative bill 2024-13. Entertain a motion from council to approve legislative bill number 2024-13.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion.
Do we need to amend this?
Yeah, there's been a recommendation from the director to amend it. You want to make that amendment?
Yeah. Per the recommendation, I'd like to make a motion to amend the bill in accordance with the recommendation of the Planning Commission by deleting Section 225-103.1 from the table of permitted uses, attachment to Part 2.
There's a motion to amend. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the amendment as read, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Amendment passes. Any further discussion on the legislative bill? Seeing none, we'll do this by roll call. All those in favor of legislative bill number 2024-13, it's emergency legislation. All those in favor of this bill as amended, we'll begin with Councilman Shields.
Aye.
Councilman Hastings.
Aye.
Vice President Merritt.
Aye.
Councilman Wynn.
Aye.
Councilman Holloway.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Legislative bill 2024-13 as amended passes unanimously.
Okay.
Mr. Benson, we have a second.
Legislative Bill 2025-01 is here to be introduced. It's an act to amend Chapter 225 of the Wicomico County Code titled Zoning, Part 3, titled Basic Definitions and Interpretations. Article 6, titled Terms Defined, Section 225-25, titled Definitions of Basic Terms, and Part 6, titled Accessory and Principal Uses. Article 18, titled Principal Uses, Section 225-67, titled Table of Permitted Uses, Designations, and Part 8, titled Special Standards for Particular Uses. Article 20, titled Uses and Standards, enumerated, Section 225-99, titled Kennel Commercial, to amend the zoning requirements to the operation of a kennel. This is here tonight to be introduced, and it is a bill relating to kennels in Wicomico County.
Thank you, Mr. Benson. Entertain a motion from council to introduce legislative bill number 2025-01.
So we move.
Second. Any discussion? Second with Councilman Merritt. Mr. Illuminati, how are you?
I'm doing well, Mr. President, members of council, thank you. Mr. Meadows is here as well. The reason for bringing this before council is that the current county law has a few requirements to meet a definition of a kennel. It requires that the domesticated animal be bred and raised and sold or kept for sale or boarded for a fee. So it does not include animals which are only bred and raised but not sold when they're not boarded for a fee. And this has provided some issues in prosecution of these matters at the district court. The surrounding counties have different legislation. So Wicomico County adopted this current code definition a number of years ago, but all the surrounding counties use the old definition, which is a specific number of animals. So Somerset County is 15 or more dogs and cats is a kennel. Worcester County's 5 or more dogs and cats is a kennel. Dorchester is 6 or more dogs. Talbot is 6 or more dogs. And Sussex County, Delaware is 5 or more dogs. And then once you go beyond that, it's a kennel. And so the Planning Commission considered the enforcement issues that arise at the staff level, the issues that have been presented in court, additionally the change in the town transition area. And so there's the proposal that's now before you. The recommendation is to amend the code. It will modify the current definition to regulate conduct to similar neighboring counties. It will establish regulations on ownership of more than 10 dogs, and it eliminates adjacent parcel requirements for setbacks. So one of the issues was only an adjacent parcel would need to meet the certain setback. And so if you had a parcel that had a panhandle to it, the other properties on the other side of the panhandle could be 50 feet away from the kennel, but they wouldn't get that protection because they aren't the adjacent property. So that's the overall goal of the legislation. Thank Planning Commission and Planning Department staff for their work on this. Mr. Meadows, do you have anything additional to add?
No, nothing to add. I agree with Mr. Illuminati's description, and the proposed legislation, I think, clears things up for staff from an enforcement standard in a better way.
Good. Any questions from council?
I have a question.
Shannon?
Would this help the gentleman that came before us concerning the dogs that were raised next door to him and then were sold in Delaware? Would that help?
So no legislation specifically designed to alleviate any one person's problem. There was a number of citizen feedback through the Planning Commission process that led to these final recommendations.
Questions?
I
Yeah.
see on the top of the page of Planning Director's report, it says these would be applied to all new kennels located in unincorporated portions of Wicomico County. Why is it just new kennels?
So if a kennel previously exists under this code, then it's already existing, and the change in use would make it a legal non-conforming use. One thing that could be considered, and there's been discussion at the staff level, is recommending a sunset provision. So what a sunset provision does is it allows those what are currently legal uses to be legal non-conforming for a period of time. And then after that period of time elapses, those uses are prohibited as well. Ocean City was considering, actually did this for a little while with sign regulations. They wanted to bring all certain signs within a certain height, within certain specifications. And so they were working on that, but then allowing individuals or the entities time to keep their old signs, order new signs, and have that period in time where they could adjust to the new law. So if that was amended, that can be something that council can consider going forward. If that's the request, legal can provide a sunset amendment to address those additional, any properties which may be legal non-conforming for a period of time.
Thank you. On the bottom of the same page, it talks about the distance requirement of 200 feet. I think that's the current regulation, right? 200 feet. I believe at one time 500 feet was under consideration. 200 feet's not that much, especially in the wintertime when there's no leaves on the trees and the sound travels pretty well.
That was something the Planning Commission considered. They talked about 200, 500, 1,000, ultimately striking the adjacent requirement. They felt the 200 was satisfied, but obviously if council feels that that number should be increased, again, a motion can be made to amend that to increase.
Thank you.
Yes.
Questions? So the question I would have then, because of the two good points that Vice President Merritt brought up, we'll do the introduction tonight, and I'm assuming it will pass. When the bill comes back, the legislative bill actually comes back for a final vote, we may have two amendments based on Mr. Merritt's suggestions to then amend that legislative bill before it's finally put into law. Is that correct?
That's a possibility. I don't know if council would want to bifurcate, do the public hearing, see what the public feedback is. Public may have some thoughts on what that distance requirement is, and then, based on that feedback, provide guidance to legal to what potential amendments would look like.
That's a good point. I think that'd be a better process than going through the trouble to try to make the amendments tonight.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so keep that in mind of the 2 points, and we'll bring it forward. Doesn't mean we'll vote in favor of them, but at least we'll have them as an option.
Get the process started.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other comments? All those in favor of the introduction of legislative bill 2025-01, the introduction of legislative bill 2025-01, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Introduction of legislative bill number 2025-01 passes unanimously.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Mr. President, we can have the public hearing on that on February the 4th at 6 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Thurley, I think you have the floor.
So the next item on the agenda is a public hearing on the capital improvement program for the county for the period of July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2030, and the capital budget for fiscal year 2026. You'll notice we have several public hearings on the agenda this evening. A public hearing notice was posted on the county's website and published in the local newspaper for each of the public hearings. To get started for the public hearing on the capital improvement program, I will read the total for each department listed through fiscal year 30. There are copies of the summary page on the table as you walk in the door for those in the audience that would like to follow along. Once I'm finished reading the totals by department, the council president will then open the floor for the public hearing. Okay. To get started, we have the general fund. We have the health department at $4,050,000. Emergency services at $26,179,000. Elections at $1 million. Department of Corrections, $25,996,000. General Services, $900,000. Public Library, $15,524,500. Warwick Community College, $9,968,750. Board of Education, $79,475,000. Public Works Engineering, $11,350,000. Public Works Water Sewer, $3,850,000. Public Works Road, $12,625,000. Civic Center, $14,762,500. Recreation and Parks, $25,957,350. For our enterprise fund, we have Public Works Solid Waste, $49,835,000. Tourism, $690,000. Airport, $37,087,000. A total of all funds, $319,250,100.
One caveat, Mrs. Hurley, is for the public's knowledge, the Cobb County Board of Education is $79 million. Part of that is a substantial, I think it's around $27 million, I believe, that we have to provide for forward funding for the state of Maryland. It was originally the state of Maryland, as is normal process, the state of Maryland agrees to pay for so much, and we pay for so much as well. Very unusual circumstance, first time I've ever witnessed it, but the state is asking us to forward fund it. That's why it's $79 million, much higher than normal. This time we open the floor for a public hearing on the capital improvement program. Anybody who would like to make a comment, come to the podium, please. State your name, your county of residence, and your concerns. And keep in mind we have a 3-minute time limit for each individual so that we can all get out of here before midnight.
Good evening. My name is Joe White, resident of Wicomico County. I'm here to ask you to delay actually voting on the CIP tonight. This is a very important document for our county, and there are just a couple of unanswered questions that I think you all deserve the time to give yourselves to make the right decisions for us. First off, we are still waiting for the final audit of the fiscal year 2024. This has come up in discussions with work sessions with the finance director about other projects, and it seems that it's a question that doesn't have a very clear answer as far as how much money is exactly in several of our funds. Second, as President Cannon just mentioned, the Fruitland Primary School, I mean, the state has given you a very hard task right now. I find it odd that they're fully funding a school in Somerset County now, and I, for one, someone who tries to stay informed, have no idea why they're asking us to forward fund. We don't know what that means. I don't think we know what that means. Does that mean that we're going to get paid in 2045 in $2,045? I think we owe it to ourselves to wait. Second, our state is dealing with a $3 billion with a B budget deficit. Just yesterday, our governor came out with some information about how he plans to solve it, but this is a structural deficit that's going to last several years. And finally, we don't know just where our disparity grant is. I think until you know where last fiscal year, which closed 6 months ago, is, what you have in the bank now, and where your new revenues are coming from, how could you make this decision? If this was my household, I'd have no idea. I wouldn't spend the money yet.
Thank you, Mr. White. Just as a point of clarification, we will not be voting on this tonight. The vote will be actually a couple months before we actually make a formal vote. We will have 3 work sessions tonight later on with different departments.
Will there be another public hearing before that, though?
There will always be time for public comments between now and then, and plenty of opportunities, so thank you, Mr. White.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michelle Wright, and I'm a Wicomico County citizen. I want to first thank our executive because I actually got to meet with her on capital improvement plan after the last budget hearing at the Civic Center. So I'm thankful that she invited me to have a meeting with her, and we talked about the Board of Education and also public roads, mainly the Bering Creek repairs in Mardella Springs. But I am also asking and thankful that James has really been instrumental in keeping me informed on what our options are and what we can do about Bering Creek and trying to keep that project on a radar screen. There is a feeling that maybe that road does not need to be fixed, but those of us living on the west side of the county, we were promised that it would be fixed. We've been waiting patiently for it to be fixed, and we feel like it's only fair that it be fixed. As far as education, as you know, that's near and dear to my heart. Fruitland Primary is a priority. That project has been started, and we can't afford not to finish it. I don't have all the details as far as the breakdown, but I'm sure that you guys have done your homework and making sure with the county executive that we do have the monies to support our public roads and our education system. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright.
Good evening. Monica Brooks, Wicomico County resident and president of NAACP. Super quick on this one. One of the things that we are very interested in seeing with the roads is Wicomico County getting some sidewalks in certain spaces or some spaces where people that walk frequently, especially Naylor Mill Road, parts of 13 that are on the north side. I have witnessed this one woman in particular who pushes a stroller down 13, crosses over the entrance of the bypass because I guess she has no other way to get to and fro. Everyone does not have the funds, even for the limited public transportation that we have, and of course that's another conversation in itself, that we are in desperate need of transportation in this region. But if we can figure out some ways that we can find some safe walking spaces for people who are literally walking commuters. This is what they do every single day. If we can consider those individuals, it's very hard in a rural community when you don't have transportation. But if we can figure a way to make part of that some sort of priority, whether it's barriers and they can walk in between, or give them some walking maps to get to different parts of the county to get to and from. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. If you can supply us with any roads that you might want to recommend, that would be great. Our first order of business would be to distinguish which might be a county road or a state road. And it could be possible that when we turn in our annual report to the state that we could put those streets in that report as well. Thank you. Any other public comments? Excuse me, in reference to the capital improvement program.
Hi, Mikkel Darlene, Wicomico County. Keep it really brief. I know you guys have so much on your plate, and I know the CIP is it's a huge thing that you guys have to go through, and the executive has to go through, and we all appreciate that. Just near and dear to many citizens is Conley Mill Park. We are really happy to see that it's at least back on the capital improvement plan. You're making a mention, it's showing as a new project. It existed from 2019, the donation of land, until last year, when it was removed. We're really happy to see it back. We know that there's a million things going on that might prevent it from being at the top of the priority list, but we really do believe that's an investment in the health, the future of Wicomico County. There's a large group of citizens that are willing to work in a capacity to fundraise, to look at alternative options like in conservation easements. We just want to work with both branches of the government to protect the promise that was made and bring about that original vision. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Darling.
Hi, my name is James Darlene from Wicomico County. I'd just like to piggyback off of what my wife just said about Connolly Mill Park. I thought it was an interesting note for you all to hear that I think at the November hearing that the executive held for the CIP, I think there was about 20 speakers, and of them, 15 spoke for Connolly Mill Park. So it's pretty huge, pretty overwhelming support for it across, a variety of community members, not just one group or anything. That's it. Thanks.
You should have brought your daughter up to speak tonight. She does a very good job as well.
Jim Atkins, Wicomico County. As was mentioned in the previous meeting, and has been mentioned so far this evening, even though the CIP is a wish list of things to happen in the county, I feel that this should be dovetailed in with the budget also. I mean, we're looking at over $300 million worth of projects, the most important being the schools and the education of the children in the county. Hot topic, of course, would be Barron Creek Road. Always has been, always will be. We are approaching 9 years. Barron Creek Road has not been there. Barron Creek Road is a convenience. It is not a necessity. Spend the money on things that need to happen. Take care of the children, take care of the intersections, take care of the East Side Connector, all the roads and things that need to be done. If you don't have anything else to spend money on, buy a couple more snow plows, because the county certainly needs them after the past 2 days.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins.
Hi, good evening. Holly Campbell, Wicomico County resident. Again, kind of piggybacking on Conley Mill Park. I'm sure nobody really wants to hear that much about it, but I want to say first, as a community of Shadow Hills, I think we're a compassionate group of people, and our hearts went out to the executive with what happened with her family this winter, and we were really sorry to see what she went through, and appreciate the attention that has to be paid to something this important after going through something like that. Our community lost a very important member of our neighborhood very recently, and Miss Denise Harden we lost, and Denise spoke at this podium passionately several times. Her home backs right up to Conley Mill Park, and she was one of the original homeowners who was promised, what would and wouldn't happen in her backyard, and she experienced a lot of distress over this last year, and lost a tough battle recently. I'm sorry, it's hard to talk about. Her husband was the barracks commander for the Maryland State Police. He was tasked by the previous owners of that property with helping to secure it. A lot of conversations happened at the dining room table in our community with people promised, what would happen there and what wouldn't happen. So we would like to continue to ask that the park be protected. It doesn't have to be prioritized. Again, I understand money is short right now, but we would like to see some type of a formal obligation on the part of the county going back to what was promised before, whether that's a deed restriction or some other formal obligation of what will or won't happen there. And we still believe it's an asset that the county has, and there could be potential opportunity to put in a footbridge and open the trails on the backside to Naylor Mill, and it would be an enhancement to what is there currently, and maybe wouldn't cost that much, and maybe fundraising could be done. There's, again, a lot of people that are willing to put in time and effort to help fundraise for that. So we'd just like to ask that that be something that's put on the agenda. And we'd like to ask for peace for Mr. Harden as he deals with the loss of his wife and our community, because it was a rough year, and Denise's loss was a surprise, and it was a tough one. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Any other comments in reference to the capital improvement program? Seeing none, that concludes the public hearing for the capital improvement program for fiscal years 2026 to 2030. Appreciate everybody's comments. Mrs. Hurley.
Okay, next on the agenda is Resolution Number 01-2025. This is amending the fiscal year 2025 position control document and the pay and classification plan to create a new position for the Department of Public Works Solid Waste Division salary, Exhibit F. This is a request to add a new position within the Solid Waste Division to be titled Environmental Compliance Technician at a grade of M40, which is to be budgeted at the midpoint of the pay grade at $85,658, and to eliminate positions number 100691 and 100728, identified as Solid Waste Compliance Specialist. And we have Mr. Mike Swavey here, Deputy Director of Public Works, if you have any questions.
This time, we open the floor for public hearing on Resolution Number 01-2025. If you have any comments you'd like to make in reference to this specific resolution, come to the podium, please. State your name, your county of residence, and your concern.
Here we go. Jim Atkins, Wicomico County. In reference to creating this new position with a salary of $85,658, stated this position would be funded by the elimination of 2 vacant positions without any additional cost to the county. The council was told on December 17th that the solid waste department was almost fully staffed. Not sure what the definition of fully staffed is, but in the presentation by Solid Waste, they stated there were 12 vacancies out of a total of 63 positions. That's 19% vacancy. That's not what most businesses would say fully staffed when you're 19% vacancies. If you look ahead at the 10-year solid waste plan on page 1/4, when you get to it, you will see that 2 positions reappear as 2 landfill inspectors. So apparently in a couple years, the 2 positions that are being deleted now will be added back in. Solid Waste Department is top heavy with management, currently staffing 1 deputy director, 1 executive director, 1 superintendent, and 3 supervisors. One of the supervisors only oversees 2 people. This number does not include the director of solid waste, which has been vacant for years. Maybe instead of adding more administration positions to the operational chart, a review of JBAs for the positions should be conducted, and each position be given the amount of responsibilities that their salaries warrant. Every time something new occurs in the county, doesn't mean that we need to hire another person to add to the payroll. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins.
Hi, my name's Mark Engberg. I'm a lifelong Wicomico County resident. Is this related to the 10-year solid waste program and adding a new position?
I would say it directly involves that department.
Yeah.
Yes.
So again, lifelong resident, local group, grassroots group, an initiative called Wicomico Clean. Group of volunteers, we've been cleaning up around the county. In the past year, we started with 4 people. We've really grown. We removed more than 9 tons of garbage from the roadsides this year as a volunteer group. We've worked very closely with Mike Swavey and the Public Works and the County Council, the city, Greater Salisbury Committee, Chamber of Commerce, Sheriff's Department, Farm Bureau, some businesses, Shorebirds, Lions Club. We've had at least 150 people come out, get their hands dirty, and help clean up. So we very strongly support what we call a solid waste remediation team, because it's not going to continue to happen with strictly a volunteer effort. I mean, the benefits are phenomenal, aesthetics, better living, makes the county more economically attractive to people live here, higher property values, keeps pollutants out of the waterways, reduce harmful effects of microplastics in our groundwater. But it's only going to happen with a government commitment, starting with a full-time dedicated staff member, what we would envision, because it's not going to happen. The volunteer effort's going to peter out. We're not spring chickens, you know? And trash remediation specialist, prevention, remediation, community education, law enforcement. There's plenty to keep them busy. And I'm confident that the volunteer groups, we've got Michelle and Elaine and Dodger and a lot of people, the Darlenes who come out week after week after week picking up trash. The community's really bought in, and I'm confident that we can continue. We've had 5 of the council members come out and clean litter with us, which was really, really great. And so we do ask that some sort of dedicated individual specific to this program, and we've got to clean up this county. It's just a disgrace. Hi, Jeannie, I haven't seen you in ages. It's just a disgrace. You know, I've been all over the world, and it's a disgrace. You go to Europe, and it's spotless, and yeah, it's just a disgrace, and this is where we live. So we got to do better. And I think Eileen would probably like to speak, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Steinberg.
Hi, my name is Elaine Gordy. I'm a licensed realtor in Wicomico County and a resident of Wicomico County. I also sell real estate in our neighboring counties, Worcester, Somerset, Dorchester, and Talbot. But also as a business person, I cannot emphasize enough to you the value of a clean environment and how terrible it looks when our pristine rural areas are marred by the intrusion of trash laying randomly around. We see trash mainly in areas between the neighborhoods, in the shoulders of the road, the farmland, and the ditches. Because we are rural, when we are out selling property, we sometimes go from one end of the county to the other. And this does not give a good first impression to people looking to move here to our county. I am one of the volunteers that pick up trash, and I must tell you, we are astounded and repulsed by the amount of household garbage literally dumped on the side of the road. Piles and piles of it. And I think Michelle can speak to that. She likes to be a detective and pick through the trash to see who's dumping all of this. Which is where this position, I feel, is very important, because we have the opportunity to impose fines on people that do this. That, you know, us as volunteers just don't have that enforcement. So the need for a full-time person regulating, overseeing this endeavor, and enforcing fines has never been greater. Our neighboring counties do such a much better job. Mark talked about the world. I like to reference Talbot County, which is spotless. Every time I show property there, there's not a piece of trash laying anywhere. So it's time for us to step up to the plate, and this is a very important issue, and I hope that you consider it. Thank you.
Swarty?
I'm Michelle Nelson, Wicomico County resident for 28 years. I've been picking trash up about 5 years. I first did it on my own. I would notice it when I was out running in the community, and I would take my daughter a lot to go out and pick up trash. And then once Craig Fonts moved to town, I know everyone knows Craig's name, I joined him, and gosh, it makes me a little bit nervous to be up here, so sorry about that. But I joined Craig, and there was a time before his health concerns got to be too much. We were going out nearly every day. Maybe it was 2020, 2021. We went out nearly every day to pick up trash. I mean, hundreds, thousands of bags. I don't even know how much. And we didn't weigh it at the time, because that's a thing. Mark likes to weigh it. So I have no idea how much trash we picked up. But Craig's no longer really able to do that anymore. But Mark has just gotten so many people now involved, and he's really brought what the county has needed. He's brought, a lot of, he's gotten the word out to the public, showing what a big problem it is. But it's just not sustainable, as he said, for the volunteers to continue doing this effort. We've spent hours and hours picking up the trash, figuring out how to get it to the landfill, which is not always easy, figuring out how to bag it. Oh, you're picking it up, your bag breaks, you have to walk a quarter-mile back, you have to get another bag. Like, it is such a process to try to pick it up and get it to landfill. And like I said, it is not sustainable for volunteers to keep doing it. A lot of what I've done has been supported by the business community through Shop Local Delmarva and donations that they've made. So I really have to give a shout out to David Galleon and Shop Local for that. I get bags from the county, but much of what I use is provided by donations, not from the county. Like I said, it's not only is it not sustainable, but everywhere that we have cleaned up, and every one of the people who are with me here will tell you, everywhere that we have cleaned up is trashed again. You can't get ahead. There's no possible way to get ahead. So without having someone from the county paid to lead the effort and having a plan, we're not going to get anywhere, and we are burned out from doing it. I mean, Mark's just been doing it about a year, and I think he's tired of it already. So whatever we can do to hire a person and be over it and have a grand plan would be very helpful and much appreciated. Thank you.
Hey, Ms. Nelson.
Mikkel Darlene, Wicomico County. And, I know that this is a public hearing about a environmental compliance specialist, but piggybacking on, what my friends here have said and what Jim Atkins has said, I think, it's really important that we look at the fact that we are top heavy in supervisors, that we are understaffed in people that, might serve this role, that might take some of this burden off of us. Just like everybody before me spoke about, we go out with our kids couple times a month. We pick up trash all the time. The places that we pick it up, it's like a tidal wave. You go back, it's filled again. We recently cleaned up Billie Jean Jackson Park with Steve Miller and Mike's Babies. We worked with them to do that. I just walked there the other day with my family. It is inundated in trash. There's no words for how quick it came back. We're willing to keep going out there. We're willing to do it as much as it takes, but we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have we're not paid, we're volunteer. So I really think it's important as we consider getting rid of 2 positions and, replacing it with another environmental supervisory position. Maybe we need that. I can't speak to that. Mike's baby can, I can't. But we need to look and see, can we do both? What's going to serve us the most? How do we balance this need? Because we need this full-time paid position to help with this litter problem that we have. It's overwhelming. And we need to see how that's balanced. And that's what I ask you in this, as you consider this resolution, is to think about how these 2 things weigh out on the scale and what we can do to make sure this need is met and make sure that this other position wouldn't cost us that opportunity. Thank you.
Darlene.
Hi, my name is Joe White. I'm resident of Wicomico County. I'll be brief. This was not one of the hearings that I made notes to talk about tonight, but I find it very hard. Well, first off, I want to say we are very lucky in this county to have volunteers who do the trash pickup. I actually follow you folks on Facebook. I'm part of a volunteer organization as well that does something different. You're nothing without boots on the ground. It's sad to hear that you all would take the time to go out to parks like Billie Jean Jackson that just saw from Parks and Rec a tremendous amount of capital improvement dollars to improve out there. But I don't see how an $85,000 a year bureaucratic job is going to solve that problem. Maybe it will, but it must require much more in-depth. And I want to just talk about, we went through the bamboo legislation. That took 6 months. If bamboo is a problem, and we're going to have that many hearings, and they were worthwhile for folks that concerns, before we decide to add a bureaucratic layer, we should also look at what laws we have in place and what enforcement we even have before we spend $85,000 a year. All of these volunteer organizations, mine or the trash pickup folks, could probably use this money to do their job or do their volunteer work before we pay for an upper level management position.
Thank you, Mr. White. Comments? Okay. That concludes the public hearing on resolution number 01-2025. Entertain a motion from council to approve resolution 01-2025. Need a motion?
Motion.
Second? We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Pam? Great. Mr. Svaby? If you could state your names and your positions for the public record, thank you very much.
Pam Olin, Finance Director.
Mike Swaby, Deputy Director of Public Works.
Adam Corey, Executive Director of Environmental Services.
Okay.
So this position is needed for the compliance with state regulations associated with operating the solid waste facility. In addition, as council is well aware, we are looking at expansion of that solid waste facility, and to be able to meet all of our expansion needs and requirements with the state of Maryland, the request for this position is needed. We are attempting at this moment to keep it budget neutral for fiscal '25. That was the purpose. These positions have been vacant, and so we have not been able to fill them. So leaving them vacant when we have a need in another way to manage our facility, and there are a lot of state rules to having such a facility. If we don't follow those rules, the state of Maryland does not like that. I'll put it that way.
I'd just like to add that, you know, the purpose of these positions was contemplated when they were identified as two separate full-time equivalents, but the salary necessary to attract the background and the education needed to properly carry out a function of compliance inspection, you won't get that at $34,000 or whatever it was, or $43,000. It's not. There needs to be a college degree. There needs to be an environmental health background. We're fortunate enough now, for in the interim while we work on the water and sewer program, to have Adam there as an acting superintendent with that background. We virtually need that same background there all the time as an inspector, as someone who's a subject matter expert for reporting in environmental health.
And so without this position, we are putting ourselves at a deficit with the state and our reporting requirements. Yes, in the 10-year plan, there's discussion about adding people, but you have to also understand we're talking about expanding a facility. And so it will be necessary in the future to have, if you're going to expand something, you have more of something, then thus you need more people to maintain it. That is not something we are anticipating for tomorrow, and that is why we were attempting to make this budget neutral, to be able to get the process started to hire this position now and start working with the state of Maryland to meet all of our requirements.
Yes.
I guess that makes perfect sense. Obviously, I know there's been questions brought up today about the level of staffing that you all have, and it's also been acknowledged that we don't have a current deputy, or we don't have a director of public works. I don't think, how many years have we been without one of those? It's been quite a while. But I guess as this particular position relates to the need that we've heard so much about as far as collecting trash and that kind of stuff, picking it up off the side, side of the roads. We've got a large volunteer work that's been, efforts been doing a lot there. I don't know if there was talk about maybe working with the city of Salisbury or something to have a part-time person as part of that. But I guess I don't want to leave this conversation and leave it only to this particular one person without acknowledging how much of an important need that is to be able to address a very obvious challenge that the county has. We're not going to bring jobs here. We're not going to bring people living here if the place is literally looks like a dump. So how do we, I guess, and I know obviously there's very budgetary concerns are a challenge. So I guess how do we reconcile all of that? I did see components within the job description that mention focusing on the of this collecting, recycling, and other kind of works, but I'm assuming that's all stuck with more of the landfill side of things. So how do we reconcile that?
So again, one position or even two positions is not going to solve the trash problem in Wicomico County. I wish I could say it would, but it's not. It's disappointing that our residents feel that once an area is cleaned up that we need to make it trashed again. That's Pam Olin's opinion. That's not an administrator. That's Pam Olin's opinion. And thus, I applaud the volunteers who are willing to take the time to continually clean up the area. Having these two positions vacant as solid waste technicians is not going to solve our problem. But we are going to create a bigger problem for ourselves if we don't meet state requirements on having a landfill in total. So I understand the concerns about the trash around the county. I also understand that this position is necessary for us to operate a safe and effective and licensed solid waste facility.
I think the public, I don't want them to conflate the two. This position will have nothing to do with litter, cleaning up litter, addressing those issues, recycling. It's not even anywhere near that section of the organizational chart. But it is an opportunity to stress very much so from the public's perspective, and I think from our perspective, and I think you all would agree, that the job that Jennifer Albero is doing is an absolutely fantastic job, but I think there needs to be assistance in that area. However you might choose, Mr. Sfaby, I'm not quite sure how you might address that, but I think that's something that we're at a juncture right now where that has to be decided upon, and something within this next fiscal year should reflect that.
So I appreciate your saying that the two positions should not be conflated. They're completely unrelated. We have evaluated both with the Clean Wicomico Committee. We've had discussions about this particular role and the eventuality that volunteerism, at least as far as leadership of that group, may diminish or dwindle. We've looked at the recycling coordinator's job description, an existing position we have, and we believe that that particular function of organizing these events falls under it in the existing position itself.
Sure.
So we feel like we've got that role covered. Now, I can't say I could see that person or that position most specifically going out to recruit volunteers. But when the groups step up to actually do the collecting of the trash, the physical hands-on work, we expect to have to coordinate that effort. We're very thankful of the volunteerism for the actual touch labor itself, but we expect to have to coordinate that effort. A lot of that is being done now by the group, the Clean Wicomico group, but we expect to have to take that over.
And so if a volunteer group of 150 people are collecting as much as they are, 2 positions within the solid waste structure is not going to solve the problem. But again, trying to keep these concepts separate, but we can look at during our budget process what we can do to help the volunteer groups to make sure we continue the process of collecting trash within our county.
What we could do is possibly have a work session, Mr. Svaby, with you and Mr. Corey as well, if you choose to. I know it's a little over, you're on the other side a little bit, but, and maybe even with Ms. Albero to come in and try to see how we might really get a handle on that, and any support that you might need to get that done.
Okay.
Very much like to see that, maybe sooner than later, so that we could possibly work it into the next budget cycle.
Fair enough. Yes, sir.
Any other questions in reference to this specific title here? Jeff?
Go ahead, Shane.
I would just like to say, I think trash, when you collect, is people problems. People. You can go today and collect the trash, and tomorrow it'll be back the same. When I was a little girl living on Delaware Avenue, when a neighbor saw a piece of trash in your yard, they would pick it up. The mindset of people today, they'll just throw the trash in your yard or a beer bottle in your yard and won't care about picking it up. But as reading the job description of this person, they have to do reports, not just pick up trash. And the way our local government, state government, and federal laws might change in 6 months, every year. It might change. We need someone to be able to accurately be able to report and respond to the state regulations. I also see, Monica's here, surface and groundwater pollution prevention and control, sediment and erosion control, air pollution prevention and control, environmental monitoring and reporting, and also what I like to see is public engagement. So the people who are collecting trash can meet to me with this person that's put in place to discuss their concerns. You have one person to contact, you can still come up to the podium, but you would have one person to contact for this. Then I look at the education requirements. You have to have a bachelor's degree. They prefer someone with environmental, where's it at? Environmental geology. The minimum is bachelor's degree in environmental science, earth science, environmental, and public health. It just won't be someone with a bachelor's degree in art. It would be a person that's very experienced biology, chemistry, engineering, and then also a master's degree. It's not required, but a person with a master's degree, because you always get continuing education because things change. So I am supporting this job hire because I think it's a necessity because of the changing of laws and accurate data. Also, we have to learn how to change the people's minds in trash, and that's a whole different story.
Either comments, Jeff?
Just a couple questions. It says in the job description that this person would oversee 30 full-time and 10 part-time people. Who's overseeing them now?
Currently, they are being overseen by me and the operations supervisor of the landfill.
And the two positions that would be eliminated, the solid waste compliance specialists, and they're currently vacant?
Yes.
How long have they been vacant?
Quite some time.
It's been at least a year.
Yeah.
More than a day?
Oh, yeah, at least.
A year?
It's been more than a year.
Probably
more than a year. 2
probably
years.
more than a year.
More than a year, okay. Okay, cool, thank you.
I agree with Ms. Olin. This isn't going to solve the trash along the road problem. That's basically crimes that's being committed, and unfortunately, it's not being. Sorry about the mask. I've had a cold. I don't have COVID, but I wanted to save our staff and my colleagues from catching the sniffles. But anyway, if you can't hear me, I'll take it off. I looked through the job summary and the essential functions, and I don't see anything in here that's going to solve the trash along the roads problem. But I'm looking at all these things that this person's supposed to do, and I'm thinking, who's doing that now? Who's doing everything that needs to be done? Because to stay in compliance, you have to have this done, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Currently,
We don't
I'm-
have a public works director. We still don't have a public works director.
That's correct, sir.
I don't understand why we're not moving in that direction, to have a public works director. Not that Mr. Savy isn't doing a good job, don't get me wrong, but it seems like that ought to be our goal, to have somebody that's in charge. And as one of the gentlemen at the podium said, to pull 2 lower paid people off just for a higher $85,000 paid person. Is there anything from the state right now that says we're not in compliance?
Well, I can actually answer that question. So effectively, to answer the first part of your question, who is overseeing the compliance, the daily compliance operation of our landfill facility? That is me.
Okay.
We do not have a superintendent. I'm acting as such and still serving as effectively the environmental consultant for all of Public Works. What we see, and in my experience working 20 years with Maryland Department of the Environment, although it is nice to have 2 laborers, if you will, services at the landfill to supplement our physical operations. Because as you can imagine, the landfill is a daily, never-ending construction project. But it is a daily science project at the same time, and there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of permit requirements, state and federally, and it is, as far as I'm concerned, the county's single largest liability for public health, the public trust, and from a financial standpoint. When we look at a $40,000 a year position with no true science background, and I asked that gentleman or lady to go on the Hill and get me monitoring well readings of what our methane levels are today, well, that's what I'm going to get. What that landfill needs is someone that can decipher that information and making a scientific decision to go to the next step of the process to ensure that we are in compliance.
Don't have anybody doing that now?
Besides myself, no.
And we did hire Adam to head up the water and sewer side of things. And so his being pulled in 2 directions does slow down the water and sewer because these tasks do need to be done. So he has graciously taken on these tasks. If we can offload these tasks to a qualified employee and allow him to be more of a reviewer of the final document, then he has more time to concentrate on the water and sewer concepts that we are looking at as well.
We out of compliance?
So I am happy to report that, in August when I came on board, I won't mince any words, that landfill was not in appropriate condition. We did have some significant non-compliance site complaints. As of our most recent inspection, we have reduced it to 1 solitary remaining site complaint. It was unfortunately due to a weather event. The Maryland Department of the Environment inspector is on his way back as soon as the snow is freed from our site, and he's welcome to come tomorrow if he wants to. It's ready to rock and roll with almost 100% compliance.
I'd rather see this put together in the budget. I mean, we're getting closer to the budget all the time, and I know this is being closed down because of you're pulling 2 positions out, but this is something that should go in the budget. I know you guys probably don't, and you're not required to, and it'd probably be very disappointing if you did pay attention to what's happening in Annapolis as far as the state budget. And I've heard that mentioned at the podium tonight. We've been warned multiple times by our local delegation. It's time to quit handing out $85,000 a year jobs right now if we don't have to have them. Okay? So that's where I'm at.
Questions? Seeing none. All those in favor of Resolution 01-2025, say aye.
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 Opposed? Opposed. Chair votes aye. Resolution 01-2025 passes by a 4-2 vote. Vice President Merritt.